This was a terrifying country. The entire nation was built like a massive coliseum. Its depraved king would regularly host brutal competitions to satisfy his twisted desires. The winner of each match was granted the power to create a new law. No matter how absurd the decree, the citizens were required to obey it without question. One day, the traveler Kino just happened to pass through this land. She was immediately forced by the soldiers to participate in a duel. If she refused, they said they would kill her on the spot. One of the soldiers even bragged proudly that, not long ago, they had tricked a married couple into entering the city, then forced them into a fight to the death. The husband ended up killing his wife in cold blood. Kino had met that couple during her travels. Hearing about what had happened to them filled her with anger. So, she agreed to take part in the competition. It was a one-on-one elimination tournament. The participants were allowed to use any weapon, even if they accidentally killed audience members. They wouldn't be punished, and if someone wanted to surrender, they could only do so with their opponent's consent. Kino's first match was against a large, muscular man. She immediately asked him to surrender, but the man scoffed at her and then launched an attack. In the next moment, Kino's expert marksmanship sent a chill down his spine. Terrified, he surrendered right away. In the following rounds, Kino continued to win match after match, but she never killed anyone. She used her precise shooting to force each opponent to yield. During this time, she also learned why the country had become this way. The previous king had been a wise and just ruler. He had raised his son under strict discipline, but the prince couldn't stand the constant restraints. Years of repressed frustration finally exploded. He murdered his own father in cold blood. Then he killed off all those who opposed him. In the end, he succeeded in taking the throne. His queen, unable to accept what he had done, took her own life. He banished his own son from the kingdom. From that moment on, the king ruled without restraint, and he created this cruel and bloody tournament. At first, the people were hesitant, but over time, they began to enjoy this degenerate way of life. Criminals and scoundrels from across the land came flocking to join, and the country turned into a gathering place for villains of every kind. After learning all of this, Kino had a plan. The next day was the final match. Kino would be facing a swordsman named Shizu. As the fight began, Shizu tried to persuade her to surrender, but Kino had to win. She hoped to end the match the same way as before, by using her sharpshooting to force him to surrender, but she hadn't expected Shizu's swordsmanship to be so extraordinary. He could deflect every one of her bullets with his blade. In a flash, he closed the distance between them, and knocked Kino's gun out of her hand with one swift motion. But Kino was prepared. She had strapped iron plates to her arms ahead of time. They helped her block Shizu's strike. Once again, Shizu kindly asked her to surrender, but Kino flatly refused, so he charged at her again. What he didn't know was that Kino had a second gun hidden. With no other choice, Shizu surrendered. The crowd erupted in cheers and shouted excitedly. They demanded Kino kill Shizu. All they wanted was more blood and carnage. Kino raised her gun, pointing it at Shizu, as if to fulfill their wish. But the person she really wanted to kill was the king, sitting behind Shizu in the stands. In an instant, the entire stadium fell silent. Kino raised both hands high. She declared herself the victor. As the winner, she announced a new rule. From now on, everyone in the country must fight each other. The one who emerges victorious in the end will become the new king. The moment her words left her mouth, chaos broke loose. The citizens all began to slaughter one another. This country is full of evil people. And now, given the chance to seize the throne, they all lost their minds. In Kino's eyes, both the king and his citizens were guilty. Everyone here was tainted by evil. Then, Kino quietly slipped away from the country. On the road, she encountered Shizu. He thanked her. It turned out Shizu was actually the prince of that country. He had planned to win the tournament himself. Then, during the awards ceremony, assassinate his father, but Kino had beaten him to it. Still, he felt as though justice for his mother had been served. From now on, he too wanted to travel the world. Just like Kino, after parting ways with Shizu, Kino arrived at a lakeside. Even though she had destroyed that twisted nation, and no more innocent travelers would be harmed, Kino didn't feel any joy, because she had witnessed the true darkness that lies within human hearts. The man killed the woman he loved with his own hands. Yet every day, he would still come and ask the soldiers if there was any news of her, and the soldiers knew full well he was the one who took her life. But they still lied and told him, "Your girlfriend will come back for you one day." In truth, the entire country was helping uphold this gentle lie, until the traveler Kino arrived and uncovered the truth. As always, the man approached Kino. asking if she had seen his lover. Of course, Kino hadn't. In the end, the man lowered his head in disappointment, murmuring how much he missed her, and how he just couldn't find her no matter what. Afterward, his caretaker came and led him away. Kino thought there was something strange about him, so she began asking around the city about his past, but it seemed like no one wanted to talk about it. Finally, a man named Charles couldn't hold it in any longer and told her the truth. He said the man's name was David. He used to be a hero of the country. 5 years ago, the king was corrupt and violent. The people were starving and suffering. Countless lives were lost to famine. David had once been a police officer. He led the villagers in a revolution against the king's rule, but during that period, David met a girl from the countryside. The two fell in love at first sight. They were deeply in love, but the day before the army set out, David realized there was a high chance he would die in battle, so he forcefully broke up with her. Then, on the day the revolutionaries stormed the palace, the king and his family were about to flee. David quickly threw a grenade at the escaping car, but the moment it left his hand, he discovered that the princess sitting in the car was his beloved. David couldn't accept it. He had killed the one he loved with his own hands. After that, he became like a lunatic. Every day, he went to the city gates asking the soldiers if they had seen his lover, and every single soldier would gently tell him, "She's just on a short journey, but one day she'll come back to find you. You must live well until then." In this way, the entire nation kept up the gentle lie together. They hoped it would help this hero keep on living, and for 5 years, rain or shine, David waited at the gate every single day. After hearing all this, Kino couldn't help but wonder, who was the caretaker always by David's side? Charles said the girl's name was Evelyn. She was a traveler who collapsed at the gate 3 years ago. The general saved her and asked her to stay and care for their former hero. Even though Evelyn looked after him with great devotion, David remained mentally broken. That's why everyone kept lying to him. Maybe it was the only thing keeping him alive. Kino was about to leave the country after learning the truth, but on the road, she happened to run into Evelyn. Her carriage had gotten stuck in the mud. Kino immediately helped push it free. Evelyn invited her over for some tea and offered to tell her a story, but as soon as they got home, Evelyn sent David away. She said David's past wasn't exactly like the others had described. 5 years ago, the princess had already gotten wind of the rebel plans, so she and the king had fled to a neighboring country in advance. The one David killed in that car was just a body double for the princess. 2 years after the princess escaped, she missed David terribly. When she heard he had gone mad, she defied all warnings and came to find him, but the long journey wore her down, and she collapsed at the city gates. That's when Kino finally realized Evelyn was the princess David had loved so dearly. To avoid being recognized by the people here, she had changed her appearance. Kino couldn't help but ask, was it worth it? Evelyn believed that David had always been waiting for her to return, that even in his madness, he had forgotten the whole world, except for her, so everything she had done was worth it. At least now, she could stay by his side. Just then, David came back home. He had lived under a web of lies all these years, but maybe that was the best thing for him. As Kino prepared to leave once more, David chased after her, ignoring everyone's protests, but this time, he was completely lucid. He told Kino that he knew everyone had been lying to him. He knew Evelyn was the princess, but to protect her identity, and to live up to the expectations of the people, he had pretended to be insane all this time. But now, he felt genuinely happy, and to him, that was enough. In fact, Evelyn had sensed it too, that David might have already figured out who she truly was. So when he ran off to chase Kino, Evelyn didn't stop him. She just smiled, turned around, and asked, "What should we have for lunch?" Their love was him willingly acting mad, waiting day after day, and her quietly staying by his side, hiding who she really was. Within that carefully woven lie was nothing but deep, unwavering love. This was a country completely free of viral infections. The entire city was covered by a transparent dome. They sterilized and disinfected everything 3 times a week. Even motorcycles were equipped with exhaust purification systems. But strangely, local children always seemed to come down with strange illnesses. It wasn't until the traveler Kino arrived that the truth behind this country was finally revealed. A strong scent of disinfectant lingered throughout the city. Kino realized that the country's hygiene standards had far surpassed anything she had ever imagined. As the sky slowly turned to dusk, just as Kino arrived at her hotel to check in. The hotel owner made a request. He asked her to share stories from her travels with his sick daughter, Mia. It turned out that very few travelers ever visited this country, and almost no one was willing to leave it. Kino's presence was the perfect window into the outside world for them. Kino didn't refuse. She shared some of the amusing things she had experienced on her journey. Mia was overjoyed. When they were alone, Mia quietly spoke to Kino about her illness. In this country, every child born had a chance of developing the same illness she had. There was no way to prevent it, and no effective treatment. That was why the country had relocated inside the glass dome, to keep any new viruses from invading again. During Mia's darkest days, she met a boy named Hank, who brought a sliver of happiness into her life. Gradually, the two developed feelings for each other. But one day, Hank suddenly told her he was leaving for a faraway place. As one of the country's pioneers, he was assigned to build a new settlement outside. Hank promised to write her letters every month. Mia asked Kino, when she left, to help deliver a paper crane she had folded for Hank. Kino happily agreed, but when she arrived at the destination, all she found was an abandoned factory. The address Hank had given was filthy and rundown, as if no one had been there for years. Just then, patrolling soldiers showed up and urged Kino to leave immediately. It seemed like they were hiding something, but when Kino said she had come to deliver something for Hank, the soldiers didn't stop her. Instead, they took her to an underground facility. It was the country's monitoring center, where every movement of the pioneers could be seen in real time. Kino handed Mia's gift to a soldier named Ethan, but Ethan told her that Hank had actually died 6 months ago. All the letters Mia received were written by him. As for the so-called pioneers, they were actually experimental test subjects, used by the country to study the mysterious illness. Because data from animal testing was limited, they chose healthy citizens without close family ties to become human test subjects. Hank and his family were among the first batch 6 months ago. Unaware of what was happening, they were forced into experiments. Hank was the youngest among them. His body had already been turned into a specimen, stored beneath the hospital where Mia lived. Kino couldn't bear to shatter Mia's last bit of hope, so she decided to leave, but Ethan stopped her, because she now knew too much about the country's secrets, and he intended to kill her. Both of them raised their guns at the same time. After 2 sharp gunshots rang out, everything came to an end. The next day, Mia received another letter from Hank. There were only 2 lines written inside. I really like your gift. Come find me when you're feeling better. Of course, this wasn't written by Ethan, just the last trace of fantasy left by Kino for the girl. But the mysterious illness still remained, and death would not stop. No one knew when the cure would be found, or how many innocent lives would have to be sacrificed along the way. On this vast grassland, there lived a herd of man-eating sheep. They usually looked cute and harmless, but the moment they spotted a human passing by, they would launch a brutal attack. The unlucky ones would be mercilessly devoured, leaving behind nothing but a pile of bones. That day, Kino happened to be passing through, and was suddenly ambushed by the sheep. She tried to speed away on her motorcycle, but more sheep appeared up ahead. They charged at Kino as if guided by some intelligence. Kino had no choice but to turn around, but she hadn't gone far when a steep cliff blocked her path. The sheep were still hot on her heels. With no other option, Kino abandoned her motorcycle and fled on foot. From the cliff above, the sheep stared at her with terrifying expressions. Kino raised her gun, but there were just too many of them. She gave up on that idea and decided to look for a safer spot to climb the cliff. But to her surprise, the sheep had no intention of letting her go. Wherever she ran, they followed close behind. Kino felt helpless. She had gone up against wicked people countless times, yet now, she was being hunted so desperately by a flock of sheep. Eventually, Kino came across a safe area and found a working jeep. The driver had already been eaten, leaving behind only bones. Kino guessed he had tried to escape, but a sheep must have slammed into his leg, breaking the bone, and that's how he ended up dying here. Kino got in the jeep and drove straight toward the herd. Before long, the sheep, completely unafraid of death, began ramming the vehicle furiously. Some even managed to jump into the car. Kino opened the gas tank, then drove in a wide loop, spilling fuel everywhere. With a single gunshot from her, a wall of flames engulfed most of the herd. But even while badly burned, the sheep charged at her again. With no other choice, Kino built a ramp and used her motorcycle to leap across the cliff, watching the sheep burn in the fire below. Kino couldn't understand why they were so obsessed. It wasn't until she arrived in the next country that she finally learned where these sheep came from. They were originally bred for combat. In this country's Colosseum, created for public entertainment, the sheep had been genetically modified. After animal rights groups intervened, the authorities were forced to release them into the wild. But these sheep, having been raised as fighting animals by humans, even after being freed from the arena, remained trapped in the mindset of constant duel. To them, attacking humans had become instinct, and in the end, their senseless obsession led to their destruction. Humans are the same way. If we remain bound by old beliefs and outdated habits, we will eventually pay a heavy price.